On July 8, 2022, early in the morning, Jimmy J. Lee walked out of his student apartment in Oxford, Mississippi. He put on a silver cloak, his favorite yellow baseball cap, and gray sandals. But there was one unusual thing. Jimmy didn't bring Lexus, the Pomeranian dog he loves so much and rarely leaves. No one knew that this would be the last time anyone would see him. When Jimmy didn't respond to his mother's text messages that morning, the family began to worry. They called continuously, but there was no response. He's not one to cut off contact, especially on a special day like today, his mother Stephanie Lee's birthday. Every year, Jimmy always sings "Happy Birthday" to his mother over the phone. But this time, cold silence prevailed. Jimmy's friends also quickly noticed something unusual. His apartment was still intact. The phone was still ringing, but no one answered. They could hear Lexus barking continuously inside, as if the little dog also sensed that something was wrong. The police were quickly called in to do a welfare check, but there was no sign that Jimmy had returned. 2 days later, an unexpected turning point appeared. A local towing company reported that they towed an abandoned vehicle in the parking lot of the Molly Bar Trails Apartments, a University of Mississippi student residence. When the police came to check it out, they immediately recognized the car. A black Ford Fusion with a distinctive yellow stripe on the hood, a bumper sticker that read, "I love my Pomeranian," and most importantly, a license plate bearing the name Jimmy J. Lee. Inside the car, Jimmy's bank cards and keys were still there, but his phone, a device that could contain important clues, was completely gone. When police reviewed the apartment complex's surveillance cameras, they discovered the last images of Jimmy. He left his apartment at 4 a.m., returned about 40 minutes later, then left again at 5:58 a.m. It's worth noting that he was only wearing a coat, hat, and sandals, an outfit that wouldn't be appropriate if someone was going away or planning to stay out for a long time. Location data from AT&T revealed that Jimmy's phone traveled to multiple locations after midnight and stopped at 7:28 a.m. near Stone Park and Residential College South. This makes the police suspect that this may be where something happened to Jimmy. But most importantly, there have been no financial transactions from Jimmy's card since July 7th. This proves that he did not leave voluntarily, nor did he perform any activities after his disappearance. Jimmy's disappearance quickly attracted the attention of the community. Family and friends organized search sessions, pleading for help from anyone with information. His mother, Stephanie Lee, sobbed during the press conference, sending a heartfelt message. "No matter who your child is, what skin color, what gender, Jimmy is always ready to help. Today, I'm asking everyone to help me find my son. If anyone knows anything, please speak up." But as the pleas ring out, the truth about Jimmy's personal life gradually emerges. Secrets that he may not even expect will become the focus of a dramatic investigation. After police found Jimmy J. Lee's car in the Molly Bar Trails parking lot, they needed a breakthrough to track him down. And the first important clue comes from one of Jimmy's closest friends, Ked Fears. Ked is a 27-year-old X-ray technician who has kept in close contact with Jimmy. When he saw the calls from his family and the police, he immediately remembered his last FaceTime call with his friend. A seemingly normal call turned out to be the key to the case. Ked said that at about 5:50 a.m. on July 8th, he and Jimmy had a video chat while Jimmy left the apartment. Jimmy looked a little stressed but kept a positive attitude. He said he was on his way to meet someone he had had an affair with the night before. However, what was unusual was that Jimmy and this person had an argument after their first meeting, to the point where he decided to block that person on all social media platforms. But just a few hours later, they contacted again. This mysterious man convinced Jimmy to come back to see him. And the reason Jimmy agreed? He promised to do something never done before, something Jimmy had been looking forward to all along. When the FaceTime call ended, Ked saw the sky gradually brighten through the screen. He heard the Ford Fusion door close, the engine start, and then Jimmy drove off into the night. At the time, Ked didn't think much about it. But when Jimmy didn't respond to his text the next morning, a feeling of anxiety invaded his mind. Ked sent the message, "Hey friend, is everything okay?" But there was no response. and that was the last time he had contact with Jimmy. Thanks to information from Ked, the police began to focus on the identity of this mysterious man. But with Jimmy having blocked him on every platform before, tracing his identity was not simple. Luckily, the police had a powerful tool at hand: Jimmy's iCloud data. After many attempts, on July 22nd, detectives finally retrieved Snapchat messages between Jimmy and an account named redeye24. The chain of messages between them confirmed what Ked told. At first, Jimmy refused to see this person again, even sarcastically saying, "You're always so mysterious, like you're trying to hide it from me." The other man replied, "You're thinking too much. We're still friends." After much hesitation, Jimmy finally agreed to return on one condition: he must show sincerity. The last message Jimmy sent at 6:03 a.m. was a brief message: "Open the door." And from that moment, Jimmy J. Lee disappeared. From iCloud data, police were able to trace the email associated with the account, redeye24, and discovered that it belonged to a man named Shelton Timothy Harrington, Jr., a 22-year-old graduate of the University of Mississippi. Harrington comes from a prominent family in Grenada, Mississippi. His grandfather was a pastor with great influence in the community, and his family owned many rental properties. On the outside, Harrington is a successful person with his own business. But inside, he lives a double life, a life that he is determined to keep secret at all costs. When police arrived, Harrington initially denied any relationship with Jimmy, saying only that they were social acquaintances. But after being questioned a second time, he began to admit that they had had a secret relationship. But why did he lie in the first place? And what happened to Jimmy after he went to his apartment that morning? Jimmy's disappearance quickly spread on social networks, drawing the attention of the LGBTQ+ community and human rights organizations. Many people believe that this case may be related to discrimination, violence against gay people, or even a hush-hush plot to protect the honor of a powerful individual. Jimmy's family constantly calls for justice. His mother, Stephanie Lee, appeared in the media, pleading with anyone with information to come forward. "We just want to know where my son is. Please don't stay silent. If anyone knows what happened, please speak up. Jimmy deserves to be found." Jimmy J. Lee's story is more than a simple disappearance. It is emblematic of those hurt by the secrets and fears of others. The question now is no longer, "Where is Jimmy?" which is, "Who took Jimmy away and why?" Let's speak up together to bring justice to Jimmy and his family. No one deserves to disappear in silence. Police now have a suspect: Shelton Timothy Harrington, Jr., the mysterious man Jimmy J. Lee met in the early morning hours of July 8th. But to be able to arrest him, they needed more evidence. Following digital traces, investigators retrieved Harrington's search history, and what they found made them shudder. Just a few minutes after Jimmy texted, "Open the door," at 6:03 a.m., Harrington went to Google and typed, "How long does it take to strangle someone to death?" That cold question was exactly the piece the police needed. But there's still a big problem: no body. Everything right now is just speculation. They needed physical evidence to incriminate Harrington, or at least get him to talk. An important turning point came from surveillance cameras around the Oxford area. Police discovered that at around 7:30 a.m. on July 8th, a man wearing a gray hoodie and black shorts, matching Harrington's description, appeared near Molly Bar Trails, where Jimmy's car was abandoned. The blurry images weren't enough to confirm his identity, but a witness suddenly appeared: Kezia Carter, an acquaintance of Harrington. Kezia remembered that morning, while filling up gas at a nearby station, he met Harrington. He was sweaty, breathing heavily, and seemed very confused. When Kezia asked him what he was doing, Harrington only vaguely replied that he was jogging. But in Mississippi's 86-degree morning heat, jogging in a long-sleeved hoodie doesn't seem normal. When asked if he knew anything about Jimmy's disappearance, Harrington offered a strange theory. Maybe he went to meet someone to have fun and was kidnapped. A statement that may sound innocent, but to the police, it was an extremely unusual suggestion. They did not believe that a normal friend could speculate in such detail about a disappearance. Harrington was unintentional, accuse yourself. Harrington's phone records also revealed suspicious movements. Immediately after meeting Jimmy, he went to a Walmart and bought a roll tape, then returned to his apartment. Not long after, his phone pinged in a remote area, Grenada, Mississippi, nearly a 90-minute drive from Oxford. Why did he go so far away on the day Jimmy disappeared? Police immediately deployed search teams around the Grenada area, using sniffer dogs and drones to check abandoned lots. But for weeks, they couldn't find any trace of Jimmy. A sense of deadlock gradually covers the case. Jimmy's family was in pain, his friends were in despair. They held prayers and marches demanding justice, but nothing changed. Then, an event caused everything to explode. When the police summoned Harrington for questioning a second time, he was changed the story. At first, he denied ever seeing Jimmy that morning. But when the police showed him phone data and surveillance cameras, he sudden change of voice. Harrington admitted that Jimmy had gone to his apartment, but he affirmed that smote. After they talked for a while, Jimmy left, and he didn't know what happened after that. This testimony completely contradicts the evidence collected. Jimmy left all his bank cards, keys, and his pet dog at home. He had no reason to suddenly disappear without taking his phone or any property with him. The police knew that Harrington was lying, but to convict him, they needed more than that. They need to find out Jimmy. While the investigation was still ongoing, a movement for justice for Jimmy J. Lee flared up. The LGBTQ+ community in Mississippi organized protests demanding a thorough investigation by the government. They believe Jimmy has become a victim of a related crime stigma and scary secrets by Harrington. The public began to ask questions. Why was Harrington so frightened that he needed to hide the truth? If he is truly innocent, why does he have to constantly change his story? And most importantly, where is Jimmy? Jimmy's mother, Stephanie Lee, appeared on television, her eyes filled with tears as she begged anyone with information to come forward. "I just want my son back. If anyone knows the truth, please speak up." The police cannot let this case go under. They decided to use an ultimate tactic to make Harrington fall. Investigators knew that Harrington was hiding something. But how to get him to confess? They decide corner him. In August, they held one big press conference, published all the evidence they had, from Snapchat messages to phone data to images from surveillance cameras. They also stated that Harrington is the main suspect in this case. For once, Harrington couldn't hide. Just a week later, the police knocked on his door arrest warrant. Harrington was accused first-degree murder, but even when arrested, he remained silent. Not a single confession. No clue as to where Jimmy might be. And now, the police's mission is not over yet. They have to find Jimmy. Harrington was arrested, but the case is not over yet. There is no body. There was no confession. And as his defense attorney quickly pointed out, there is no direct physical evidence accused him of killing Jimmy. The police knew they needed to do something, found Jimmy J. Lee. But after weeks of searching around Oxford and Grenada, there was no trace of Jimmy. The investigation came to a standstill, and his family began to fear the worst, that their son would never be found. However, Jimmy's mother, Stephanie Lee, refused to give up. She appeared on television, tears streaming down her face as she begged the community for help. "Someone knows what happened. Please speak up. Don't let my son be forgotten." The public has been indignant before, but now the wave of demand for justice is stronger than ever. Protests, viral hashtags on social networks, calls from LGBTQ+ rights activists. Jimmy deserves to be found. And then, a ray of hope appeared. While Harrington's attorney tried to paint a picture of what a free-living young man might have been, disappear at will, investigators continued to dig deeper into his movements. On July 8, they discovered that after purchasing duct tape from Walmart, Harrington drove back to Grenada. And not only that. From the phone records, they saw that he had stopped by a remote area outside the city, where there are very few houses but a lot of abandoned land. This area used to be one illegal dumping site. Sniffer dogs were dispatched. Search teams began to search every small corner of the area. But for weeks, nothing. Jimmy's family continued to hope, but despair began to set in. Could Harrington have hidden Jimmy somewhere he can't find? Then, on February 3, 2025, almost 2 years after Jimmy went missing, discovered by a group of hunters. Part of the human body was buried under a pile of trash. They immediately reported to the police. 2 days later, DNA testing results confirmed. That's Jimmy J. Lee. The whole community exploded. Tear, maddening, and determined to bring Harrington to justice. Police publicized this discovery in the media, but Harrington remained silent. He didn't say a word. Don't confess. Don't reveal what happened. But now, he has no way back. Based on the location where the body was found, prosecutors quickly re-indicted Harrington on charges of first-degree murder and concealment of evidence. This time, there's nothing left to argue about. He tried to hide the truth, but the truth always finds a way to emerge. As the case entered the trial stage, public opinion became stronger and stronger. They don't just want Harrington convicted, they want change. They want LGBTQ+ people like Jimmy better protected. They want people who commit crimes because of discrimination must be punished appropriately. They want no one else will have to suffer the same fate as Jimmy. And the most important thing, they want justice. Justice for a young man full of dreams. Justice for a son taken away too soon. Justice for a community that has suffered enough. It is now the duty of the court to ensure that justice is done. And that, friends, is why we cannot turn our backs on this story. The trial of Timothy Harrington on charges of first-degree murder and concealment of evidence officially began in June 2025. The whole United States followed the case. The courtroom was packed. Reporters crowded at the entrance. Protesters gathered outside, holding up signs bearing the words "Justice for Jimmy" and "Say his name." Jimmy J. Lee was taken away, but no one will let him be forgotten. And now, Timothy Harrington must face the consequences of what he did. The prosecutor entered the courtroom with hundreds of pages of evidence. They flashed Snapchat messages onto the screen, evidence of Harrington and Jimmy's secret relationship. They presented phone records, proving that it was Harrington who called Jimmy back that morning. They played surveillance camera footage showing Harrington running out of the Molly Bar parking lot shortly after Jimmy's car was left there. But the most important evidence? Harrington's Google search history. The prosecutor read aloud in court. What's the quickest way to strangle someone? How long does it take for a person to stop breathing? How to hide a body? These horrifying questions were sought just minutes before Jimmy disappeared. The courtroom was filled with eerie silence. Next to Jimmy's family, his mother, Stephanie Lee, clasped her hands in prayer. She had been waiting for this moment for nearly 3 years. Harrington sat motionless, wearing a dark suit. He didn't shed a single tear. His defense attorney tried to make familiar arguments. There were no eyewitnesses to the murder. There was no weapon used in the crime. No one knows exactly what happened that morning. They tried to smear Jimmy, painting him as a young man who lived a wild life, implying that he might have been in danger from someone else. But the public is not fooled. This is no ordinary disappearance. This is not an accident. This is a murder. When Jimmy's mother took the witness stand, the entire courtroom fell silent. She looked the jury straight in the eyes, her voice trembling but steady. My son is a good man. He didn't deserve this. Someone decided that their secret was more important than his life. And I'm here today to say no, we will not let this stay hidden. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Please, don't let him get away with this. Jimmy deserves justice. After 3 weeks of trial, the jury entered the deliberation room. 4 days. The whole country waited anxiously. Then, on July 3, 2025, the jury returned to the courtroom. The judge asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict yet?" The foreman of the jury nodded and handed over the paper. The entire courtroom held its breath. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of concealing evidence, guilty. Jimmy's family hugged each other, tears flowing. Timothy Harrington didn't say a word. His face was pale. The judge sentenced, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Justice has been served. After the trial, Jimmy's mother stood before hundreds of journalists, her voice trembling. I never want anyone else to go through this pain, but today, Jimmy finally got justice, and I know somewhere he's smiling. She placed her hand over her heart, where there was a small badge bearing the words, Justice for Jimmy. And as dusk fell, she knew that her son's story would never be forgotten. After the trial ended, Timothy Harrington was sentenced to life in prison. There is no chance of acquittal. Jimmy J. Lee's family and friends finally get the justice they've been fighting for 3 years. But when the courtroom door closed, Jimmy's mother, Stephanie Lee, knows this is not the end. She got justice for her son, but how many other families are still waiting? How many other victims, young people, suffered silenced by those who fear the truth? Jimmy is gone. But his story is his will not be forgotten. 3 months after the trial, Stephanie Lee appeared on Good Morning America. She sat opposite the host, her hand on a small badge. Justice for Jimmy. I know that Jimmy is not the only one. There are too many people in the LGBTQ+ community who have been hurt, abused, even killed by those who want to keep it a secret. We cannot let that continue. She continued her son's story, not letting this tragedy sink into oblivion. Together with human rights organizations, Stephanie Lee founded the Jimmy J. Lee Foundation,